director for today, Sowmya Srinivasan. Storytelling is the big buzzword of today in the worlds of politics, industry, management, or education. What our mothers and grandmothers did just to keep us engaged is today an art, a science, a management strategy, a tool of both education and entertainment. This evening, Sowmya Srinivasan will tell us her own story. She has been telling stories from 2008 to people of all ages. She is one of the founder members of Bangalore Storytelling Society, started in 2013, which spreads awareness about the art of oral storytelling. Even Prime Minister Modi mentioned this society in a recent Monkey Bath episode. Sowmya tells stories to stimulate creativity in children. Stories can inspire children to imagine and create new wonderful worlds for themselves, she says. She also taps the power of storytelling to quicken healing from illness, to combat sexual abuse of the children's sexual abuse, to strengthen skill development in schools through a special curriculum, to promote women's empowerment. She is connected with several storytelling institutions. She has taken part in a number of workshops, seminars, festivals, carnivals, and summer camps in India and in Singapore. Academically, she has a master's degree in psychology and a postgraduate diploma in special education. Today, she'll talk to us on storytelling for a better world. Over to Sowmya Srinivasan. Sowmya, over to you.
Thank you very much for that introduction. And thank you, Madhu Uncle, for your wonderful invite. And the invite which went out to everybody. It was something that I'm going to treasure. Well, stories everywhere. Stories here and there. Stories for you and for me. Stories, come, let's share. A psychologist by name of Gwen had attended a musical concert by Pandit Ravi Shankar. This is way back in the 1970s when Pandit Ji was performing at the University of Berkeley. He had got onto the stage and he was seated there, in his usual style, his legs in that angle, his leg in that angle, and his sitar resting on his feet. And as the audience watched with bated breath, waiting for him to start, he started tuning the sitar. He tuned it, he tuned it, he tuned it, he tuned it. For the next 25 minutes, he was just tuning the sitar. And to the amazement of everyone present there, the entire audience waited for 25 minutes. And when he started, of course, they were taken away in that flow of music. Much later, this psychologist happened to meet Pandit Ravi Shankar and ask him, what was the intention? What was wrong that day? Why were you tuning your sitar for so long? And apparently, Panditji said, I was not tuning the sitar. I was tuning my audience. So with that, and hoping that we're all tuned into entering this story world, I will share a story with you. My work has taken me through many ages, many genres, many kinds of learning. But the one which resonates with me is healing. How does a story become a healing story? That's what we're going to experience today, and I'm going to talk about it. So come with me as I share a story that is very close to my heart. It comes from where I live, this land, Karnataka. ಧರಣಿ ಮಂಡಲ ಮಧ್ಯದೊಳಗೆ ಮೆರೆಯುತ್ತಿಹ ಕರ್ನಾಟ ದೇಶದೆ ಒಳಿರುವ ಕಾಳಿಂಗನೆಂಬ ಗೊಲ್ಲನ ಪರಿಚಯ Once there was a woman. As a child in the village, she knew a song and she knew a story. And wherever she went, you know how parents, grandparents have this habit of pushing their children, sing the song, tell the story. You know that, no? Why don't you tell the story? Why don't you sing that song? That's what happened to her too. And wherever she went, she would sing her song, she would tell her story. And that gave happiness just not to herself, but to everyone gathered around. But then this young woman grew up. She became older. And it was time for her to be married and to go to her husband's village. There, life took a different turn. From morning till evening, chores occupied her time every minute. Where was the time to sing her song or to tell her story? It was, of course, a family. Everybody had their little work to do and their jobs cut out and chores to be finished and things to be done. And it kept her busy. She was not complaining. She enjoyed herself. But what happened to the story and what happened to the song? They stayed inside her until one day, let me tell you, the story and song inside her were furious, terribly angry. How long will she keep us inside her? We want to escape. We need our freedom. They yearned to come out of her. And that's why when she was sleeping, napping one afternoon after a whole morning's day of chores, just as she was lying down on that cot, the story escaped from her mouth as a snore. And the song came out through her nose as a snore, yes. And they decided to take revenge on her. The story which had escaped from her mouth, well, it became a man's coat. And the song that escaped from her nose, it became a man's chappal. And they placed themselves just outside the door, correctly in such a way that the coat hung itself on a hook and the chappal placed itself outside the threshold. The day was ending. The sun had almost set and the husband was returning home. His weary legs was making its way towards the hut when his feet crossed the steps. Just then, you know what he saw? The chappal and the coat. Kamala! He barged into the house. What is this? Whose chappal? Whose coat have you been seeing somebody else in when I'm not there? All the days, tensions, stress seemed to pour out of him and he poured it out on poor Kamala. What coat? What chappal? Kamala was completely unaware. You know, she was sleeping when they escaped from her. I don't know anything. Come and see. And the two walked outside. There, Kamala saw the coat and she saw the chappal. But I have no idea where it came from. The two spent the whole evening trying to find out where the chappal and coat had come from. But the man's doubt was not reducing. And that night, the meal was had in utter silence, except for the tears coming down from Kamala's eyes. You know, the man decided that sleeping inside the house tonight is going to be very difficult for me. Let me step out. Perhaps I will sleep outside. Or better, I will go to the temple and I will sleep there tonight. I cannot listen to this sniffling. He picked up his bedsheet and his pillow and stepped out of the house and to the Hanuman temple just down the road. He reached the Hanuman temple, spread out his bedsheet, put the pillow and sat down. Of course, we all have the habit of saying a little prayer before we lie down, and that's what he did. Just then, it was quite late. He heard some whispering. It seemed to come from inside the sanctum sanctorum of the temple. Psst, 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 psst. His ears perked up. What is this? Who is talking? Then he could hear clear voices saying things like, oh, this happened in that house, that happened in this house. It looked like the flames. The flames had gathered inside the temple to talk about what was happening in the houses in the village. That is right. That is what happens in the village. All the flames that are put off in everyone's house gather in the temple and they talk to each other. They gossip. They tell about the happenings in each house. But where was the flame from Kamala's house? It had not reached. His ears perked up. Kamala? They were talking, the flames were talking about Kamala, his wife. And he heard them say, finally, a flame arrived and it said, this poor Kamala, she suffered tonight. That husband, he didn't know that it was a story and song inside her which was taking revenge by becoming the chappal and the coat. That is what happened. There was a fight over that. Now the man's eyes opened wide. Is that so? Do I believe? Well, what happens in the temple must be true. He waited for the first dawn of light and rushed back to his house, took the steps in 2 jumps and went inside. Kamala, Kamala, please forgive me. I have made a mistake. I doubted you. Now the doubt is gone, but I am curious. What is the song? What is the story you have? Share with me, Kamala. Come, sit down. Share your story and song with me. Story and song? What do you mean, husband? Where is the story? Where is the song? You know, and I know what happened to the story and song. They become the chappal and coat. They have left her, no? Then the man realized. He stepped out, picked up the coat, wore it, put it on his wife, Kamala, made her wear the chappal and said, now tell me your story. Tell me your song. And they spent the whole morning sharing stories and telling what happened in the song. So, a story for all of us. Now, the story is a very traditional story which comes from Karnataka, collected by A.K. Ramanujan. But I am interested in knowing what caught your attention. I would like you all to unmute yourself and speak to me. What caught your attention in this story? What stands out for you? And if there is an image that speaks to you, share with me.
There are so many images, just not one image. I mean, if you go through the story, the way you delivered it, first is your image. You have articulated it very well. So that's the first image that we had. And then one image is that whatever you hold it inside you, it has to come out in some way or other is one thing, this is just a kind of, you made it into a story to say that what you hold inside you will somehow, it will manifest in some way. That is the thing this is what the takeaway I have.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anyone else wants to share any image that stayed with you from the story? Something that caught your attention from the story?
I think the image of the dancing flames, I think that was something that immediately triggered my my imagination. And the way you equated it to the gossip of the village, I was absolutely in awe of that. So as a writer myself, that is something that it was a bit of a hook, which immediately took me to a whole different world. So that is an image that stayed with me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yes. Well, anyone else wants to? One more?
For me, the image of the story escaping.
Ah,
From the, I mean, that's
yes,
remarkable.
yes, yes, yes. Isn't it beautiful how they have imagined the story escaping from the body as a snore? The next question that I will ask you all is, what are you feeling about the story?
I felt like a child.
Okay.
I mean, I was wrapped in that, attentive and listening. Next what? Next what? I
Yes,
almost became a child listening to my mother or my grandmother. That's what
yes,
I felt, really.
absolutely, absolutely. Anyone
I
else?
was
Yeah,
more
totally.
in touch with the fact that when we have pent up emotions and feelings, they may take the form of a story. They will escape somewhere. It will show in our behavior that we are carrying too much within us. That's what I resonated with.
Yes, yes.
You know, in Bengali, in our Bengali folk, there are these fairy tales
Yes,
which are told by grandmothers and grandfathers. We have books on that.
yes.
And
Jadoo,
these like Thakuma Jhuli and
Thakur Mat Ki Juli. Yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah,
there are stories like that.
yeah.
And this was very similar to, it reminded me of those stories. Then again, you have very odd situations, like something coming out of the nose and becoming a chappal or this thing. Is very similar. We have got very similar type of stories in Bengali also.
Yeah,
Bengali
yeah,
folk,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Beautiful. Yeah. So that is engaging with the feelings that the story evokes. And then what kind of memories does it trigger from your own life?
I was
Does
taken
this,
back to my children's school, where as a parent you go and see the children, enacting things. I was taken back there.
okay. Okay. Yeah. Anybody else? What kind of memories got triggered by this?
A childhood, of course.
Our own village, when we go for holidays to our own village, where we, hear such similar, simple stories, imaginative stories.
Yes. Yes.
See, the thing is, Sowmya, we have been put in a very kind, strange situation. We only ask questions. We never answer questions.
You're talking about me or yourself?
Ourselves, most of us, we only ask. We never answer questions.
Correct, correct. But the beauty of this whole thing is that the questions are more important than the answers. The questions you ask are more important than the answers. So, like I said, we engage with the images, the feelings, and the memories it evokes. And this becomes a kind of a healing process. One more question I have to ask. So, what color is the coat?
Black.
I thought it was black, yeah.
I don't think you mentioned the color of the book.
Yeah, yeah.
We imagined it to be black, yeah.
Yes, that's the point. So a lot of what happens in a story is filled in by our own imagination. So this is what a story does. This concept where we put ourselves into the story is so automatic. We are not even aware of it. It's very automatic. We put ourselves in, and this was studied by Carl Jung, Joseph Campbell, all the names that you would come across when you get into storytelling. So Carl Jung determined that the personal unconscious is projecting itself into stories, into images. And we put our own beliefs, our values, our thoughts into what we hear, what we experience in a story. And that gives a clue about ourselves. So it's kind of a very beautiful process. And this is what we make use of in healing storytelling. This is what I do. I tell stories, and then we process the story through the feelings, the images that you connect to, the memories that are getting triggered off, the the connection, the personal connect we can have with the story. So the same story, when I've told to a group of women, they were very upset at the end, saying that I have an angry husband, just like the character in this story. So there is then a dialogue about this relationship and how relationships can be different in different ways, and how men show up, how women show up. So stories also become a trigger, a place to start talking about certain untold stories. So this would have never happened in a group of women who have just gathered, and to trigger them to speak about something so close and to speak about stories that are held within is something which resonates with what Maya Angelou says. There is nothing worse than a story untold. So holding a story which is within us is more damaging than letting it go and being able to tell it without feeling pain, which comes at the end of the healing, of course. But when we process it through a story, we are able to express our feelings, our thoughts, our deepest emotions, which is triggered by the story. And if you see, a story is not a plot, a theme. It's basically something much more deeper. It is the emotion. Most stories trigger an emotion in us, and that's why we remember the story. So as a takeaway for all of you, if you're telling a story, somebody asked me if I can tell a personal story. A personal story which is crafted in such a way that it evokes a particular emotion is a well-told story. So story has to evoke an emotion in the audience. It has to touch a chord, as they say. It has to hook the listener. It has to get your listener invested in what you're trying to tell through the story by reaching out and capturing their emotions. So what are the stories? What are the movies? What are the stories that you like? Think about it. Why do you like those stories? Why are you enamored by a particular story? So my job as a storyteller very often is not just to tell stories, but is to ask questions. I ask a lot of questions because at the end of the day, my kind of storytelling is the purpose is self-awareness. So that's where my background in psychology comes into play. I believe that, and this is based on Carl Jung's this thing, that the soul, the self-reflective soul is the most enlightened. The one who is able to go on an inward journey to know his own soul, his own self, is the most enlightened. So through this work that I do, I take people into an inward journey so they can reflect upon their own selves, their own beliefs, their
Something wrong with the video.
Yeah, she's having a network issue. Her signal is showing yellow. Her signal is a bit weak, so I think it will be rectified soon.
What I was worried about. In a house, the signal is very bad normally.
Bangalore usually has very good signal, but yeah, we can't help certain times.
Maybe we have to ask her to. She's gone off, I think. No?
Yeah, she's gone off. She'll reconnect.
Yeah.
She'll come back with a new story. Let's wait for her.
Or we can have Ranjit tell us a story.
No, Bapi and Mrs. Bapi are there. So
Yeah.
I
We'll refrain from telling stories.
So Bhaumik won't tell us a story now since Booma's there.
We're sitting together itself is a story. We're
Ruma
sitting
can
together. No, it's a story.
Ruma can see through all his stories.
No, I can't. I don't have such special powers.
No comments.
Rajan, I was seeing Sowmya and I said she's so familiar looking, so familiar looking. She looks like, Rajan's daughter. I must tell Rajan about this.
Bhaumik, do you read our emails?
That means he doesn't read it.
Then Ruma came and I said, Ruma, this is Sowmya. She said, yeah.
He already addressed
You
the
know your
Indian Club
secret.
in August.
No, he was worried, because Rajan used to go to Bangalore very often during his heydays. That's what his concern was.
I thought he stuck to only rural areas, Ranjit.
Ranjit is full of stories, interesting stories.
Outskirts of Bangalore, rural areas.
Called Bangalore Rural. Bangalore market is divided into urban and rural.
The water to the top. He sowed the seeds along the side in which the pot had a hole. And this he did for many, many days. And soon he had the dream again. And this time, once more, he heard the perfect pot speak and the imperfect pot feel miserable. But in his dream, he told the imperfect pot, look, 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 along the way that I carry you, look, you can see flowers have sprouted because the very hole in which is in you has watered the seeds along the path. And he woke up to smile at both the pots, the perfect pot and the imperfect pot. And now think of all those cracks in you, those imperfections in you, which is a gift. Just as the imperfection in the pot was a gift of water to the plants on the way. So think of what are all the cracks in you, which is actually a gift. And also think, who is the water bearer in your life? Who is the one who takes you as you are and supports you? Who is the water bearer in your life? Well, that's another story for you to take back home and to mull over. Nazaruddin Hoja is another favorite of mine. I can fill the whole hour with stories. I don't even have to talk about storytelling or stories. But Hoja is another very famous and very, very beloved character who comes from the area of Turkey. He is a Effendi. He's a master. He's like a guru. But at the same time, much of his wisdom comes from a bit of quirkiness and a maverick sense of humor. So Nazaruddin Hoja is sitting on a pile of bananas. Yeah, that's how he decides to while away his time. In the marketplace, he was sitting on a pile of bananas, eating one thoughtfully, when a man walked up to him and said, "Oh, great, great Nazaruddin, tell me, how does one make a good judgment?" Good judgment. That is a path to happiness. Yes, 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 said the man. Yes, that is a path to happiness. How does one get happiness? You answered it yourself, good judgment. But how does one gain good judgment? How does one gain good judgment? Through experience, said Nasruddin. Through experience? But how does one gain experience? That is worth thinking about. One gains experience through all our bad judgments. And Effendi was quiet after that. Truly, what we learn the most is from our bad judgments. Well, any questions? And I'm open to a conversation, a discussion.
I have a question, Sowmya. The question is that you went offline in between. Were you trying to tune the Rotarians? See,
I think I was being tuned. I was being tuned.
We stood the ground, you see. 22 of us are still there. So your tuning is good. We waited for you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Sowmya. Lovely seeing you after such a long time. How are you?
I'm good, Romanti. I'm good.
So which story of yours has had the best effect, has charmed everyone? Do you remember one story that was very, very, very impactful?
Yes. So in my healing circles, I've done this story called The Raven and the Whale. That's a beautiful question because all storytellers have these favorite stories, you know, and it's an Inuit folktale that I tell. I also find that if I tell Indian audience Indian stories, they like, I already know this, I know these connections. But if I tell them from another culture, since it's a new kind of an experience, they are more willing to listen. This is something that I have also learned. So this Inuit story called The Raven and the Whale, which has given rise to something called as walking into the belly of the whale, which is a concept even Joseph Campbell speaks about and Carl Jung has analyzed to a great extent. Walking into the belly of the whale is meeting your desires, meeting what you really desire in a face-to-face. It's walking into that cave and coming face-to-face, not just your desires, your fears, all that you don't want to face. So this particular story called as The Raven and the Whale is my favorite, all-time favorite. And it really talks about, it talks about death. So it talks about how one has to accept the inevitability of death. I mean, there are so many, of course, other smaller stories that I enjoy also to tell. And elephant stories, as I had mentioned in my thing, are quite my favorite. My first story that I told as a, for children is an elephant story about identity. So that's also something that really is close to my heart. Thank you, Uncle.
I have a question. What is more powerful from in healing from a storytelling perspective, in your experience? Is it humor or emotion? What brings out the best responses from the circle?
Emotions, as far as I believe that it's the ability to speak about a range of emotions. But if you're looking at moving into a positive space, humor is a big tool. Thanks for bringing that up. Humor is a big tool that is used along with stories to renew hope and to bring about growth and resilience, build resilience. So when I do stories to build resilience, I do try to bring in humor, and that's a very important part of story crafting.
Sowmya, what led you to this profession? Is there anything that happened, or it was a natural progression?
So as you know, my father and mother, both of them had put us into these dance classes and music classes. And I was also into a lot of theater as a youngster. I think it all culminated, but it was actually my psychology background which gave me the impetus. And also when I was working in the special school, I used to tell stories to the children, and even for children with cognitive deficits, a story would capture their attention, especially if you do it with a bit of props and a lot of voice modulation. It would just keep them engaged, and I was like amazed. It's so difficult otherwise to keep children's attention. So this is something that worked for me. But I can frankly tell you, Zoom storytelling is very challenging. So it's defies all kinds of.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly.
There's the joy of actually sitting in with a group of children and telling a story is nothing compared to. I mean, is everything. You cannot compare it to telling it online.
You're right. Yeah.
I can't agree with you more. Conducting a meeting really on Zoom.
Yes.
Yeah. You don't get the body language.
Yes, exactly. And we storytellers constantly adapt. Yeah, we adapt to the story depending on the story, on the body language.
Any more questions?
I'm extremely sorry for my, the net connection and the disconnect which happened. What I was praying
don't bother about it. Don't bother about it. That happens. Glitches always happen. Don't even think of it. Right? We need to live with that. I request Rotary Shamla to propose a vote of thanks.
You had a question for me, Auntie?
Oh, yeah. No, I just wanted to know which is a group where your stories have been impacted most, besides the children, like the group. Nowadays, you have a lot of groups, so teenage groups, women group, senior citizens group, so corporate groups also. So I just wanted to know which is a women's group. I see. Okay. Thank you. Sowmya, it was really wonderful.
Women. I do a lot of holding space.
Okay. Thank you for the wonderful transporting us to our days of our grandmother's storytelling, and you have such a wonderful style of telling stories. So full of dramatics. Dramatizing the story is it's a talent by itself. And they say that good stories are told by people who've got a heart full of love and a song in their heart and a bag full of stories. Thank you so much. And I now know today, I know the name of your Soul Space Storytell. I know from where it came, from your talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sowmya. It was very nice. We all enjoyed it.
This meeting of the Rotary Club of Rotary South is adjourned. We can continue with our chat. Absolutely no issues. We can continue with the chat. Oh, she left.
No, she. I think.
No, she's very much there.
Yeah.
She's there. Yeah. Yeah, Ranjit, we can listen to your stories now again.
No, Madhu was telling us. I think she's there. Let's not. When she's there, let us honor the guest.
Sowmya, are you there?
Oh, Sowmya is. Yeah, she's there.
Yeah, her screen is there. Yeah.
She's there. Okay, I think she's also there. Okay, bye.
Yeah,
take care.
Yeah.
Shall we meet next week?
Thank you.
Bye, Sarvesh. Yeah. Bye, Kalyan.
Bye, Sarvesh.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye, everyone. Have a nice weekend and stay safe.
Bye.